Uhuru, everyone! Uhuru, welcome to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's Reparations Study Group. This is episode 11, called White Solidarity with the International African Revolution. And I am here with my co-host, Chair Jesse Nevel, National Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and our very special guest, Penny Hess, the Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny.
Uhuru, Jackson, and
Uhuru.
Jesse.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. So, welcome. If you are tuning in for the first time, we are the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. We were formed and are led by the African People's Socialist Party. The African People's Socialist Party formed in 1972, and in 1976, they formed the African People's Solidarity Committee, the cadre organization of white people under the leadership of the African Revolution. And the Solidarity Committee organizes in the white community for reparations to the African Revolution. And the mass organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee is the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. And so this is our weekly study. This is your place to ask your questions, to learn more about the Uhuru movement, about socialism, about reparations, about the worldwide anti-colonial revolution. So welcome. Feel free to put in the comments where you're tuning in from so we can see where everyone is. And please share far and wide so that we have a real discussion, a real study group, and can reach the people who are asking themselves these questions and looking for answers. So again, my name is Jackson, and from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and so we are studying the Burning Spear newspaper. It is the news organ, the newspaper of the African People's Socialist Party, and we are studying page 7, which is written by Chairman Tafari Mujeri of the African People's Socialist Party occupied Azania, or South Africa. But first, I want to discuss a little bit about the Burning Spear newspaper. So this is the February 2020 issue. And it's been in print since 1968. And it really, delves into, news analysis and what is going on around the world and in the Black community. It is written from the perspective of African internationalism, which is the political theory of the Uhuru movement from Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And before we dive into the study, I really want to appreciate Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has been fighting for his people and for all oppressed people around the world since the 1960s. If you open up to page 8, you will see a photo of the National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party, and Chairman Omali Yeshitela front and center. And so really want to appreciate Chairman Omali Yeshitela and encourage you to read his books. His most latest book is Vanguard, The Advanced Attachment of the African Revolution. Highly recommend. It is the report to the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party and African Socialist International. And we'll be talking a lot about the African Socialist International in this study. And really lays out the analysis of this political period that we're in, summing up what the movement has been doing and the way forward. And we'll be discussing at least a couple of the mandates of this Congress, as the Congresses are every 5 years. So we'll be discussing a couple of the mandates. I also recommend An Uneasy Equilibrium, that also delves into, the question of the African nation. Both books delve into that. And this is the report to the 6th Congress. So I highly recommend these. You can get them at Burning Spear Marketplace. Our moderators have posted those in the comments. And also, Uhuru Leah Fifield from Minneapolis. Uhuru. We also have Temba Shabanda of the African People's Socialist Party tuning in. John Hill Jr. says Uhuru from NYC. Virginia Wilson from Louisville, Kentucky. Ron Hudson from Seattle, Washington. Santosh from here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And many others. So anyway, salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And the entire National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party, including Ona Zanea right here, who leads all of the economic work of the Uhuru movement, and that is where the reparations that we raise in the Solidarity movement go to the Black Power Blueprint. So I recommend checking all those out at blackpowerblueprint.org. And also, so I want to salute Akile Anai, pictured right here, who is the Director of Agitation and Propaganda of the African People's Socialist Party, which includes being the editor-in-chief of the Burning Spear newspaper, which again we are studying tonight. And also want to salute Chairwoman Penny, our guest tonight, who is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee and author of Overturning the Culture of Violence. As Casey Mackey, who is an incredible member of the Solidarity movement, says, this is a real history of white people. This is, it's called Overturning the Culture of Violence, talking about our own white culture of violence, white power, colonialism, and how we can overturn that and have a real relationship with the rest of the world that is not parasitic, that we can join the rest of humanity, join the African Revolution. So definitely recommend. Go to Burning Spear Marketplace in order to order that and to order your Burning Spear newspaper. And also salute Chair Jesse, National Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So I want to propose we go into our study. We have Edwina Rockman Baithj, who says Uhuru. Wonderful. And Virginia Wilson says, really look forward to the studies every week and learning more about real socialism. And Jacob Scott is joining from Spokane, Washington, and many others. So please continue to share far and wide, and let's get the word out there. All right. So, Chair Jesse, Chairwoman Penny, would you like to say anything before we go into our article?
Uhuru, I'm just really glad to be here on this program. I'm really excited for this study. It's an amazing article. It's very, very powerful and really moving and just incredibly well written and politically just an incredible piece to study. So I'm really glad we're reading this, and I want to really appreciate Chairwoman Penny Hess, who is joining us from St. Louis, and really salute the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, Chairman Omali Shatella, and the theory of African internationalism that is guiding this entire discussion. So just really looking forward to it. And Chairwoman Penny, anything you wanted to say at the top of the program before we dive into reading this article?
Well, I just want to say I'm so excited to be here today. It's really, really powerful always to study the sphere, and I just really salute you, Comrade Jackson, for pushing this and always being here every week to read and study the Burning Spear. So it's very, very powerful. I wanted to join in saluting Chairman Omali Shatella, who is our leadership in the African People's Solidarity Committee, working under the leadership, the direct leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and the chairman, and for the theory of African internationalism and for this newspaper, which has been coming out for over 50 years. And I want to salute Deputy Chair Ona Zanea, who, for so many of us in the Solidarity movement, work directly under her leadership, and it is really powerful, especially on projects such as the Black Power Blueprint and any number of the 50 economic institutions of the African People's Socialist Party. And I want to salute Director Akile. He's the editor of the Burning Spear. This is a great spear, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So
incredible.
Powerful. I love the article on Soleimani, the U.S. murder of the Iranian general, and the chairman's analysis of that, which is so timely. And, of course, Deputy Chair Ona's page, which is really powerful. And I especially wanted to salute the African National Women's Organization, which is a powerful organization of the party that is getting ready to have its convention in about a month in March and in Philadelphia, and that they had two incredible articles this month. One of them written, a very moving article by ANWO President yesterday to an African woman in prison, which is very, very powerful. And then the regular Harriet's Daughters column, which was written by the party's Midwest regional organizer, Malika Alexander, and that was, wow, that was a very, very impressive article. It was really well written and just laid out the political basis, African internationalism, and its basis for the foundation of the African National Women's Organization and the struggle of African working class women to lead in the liberation of the African nation. So, you know, it's an incredible sphere, as always. And I don't know if you're ready to go into this article now, or is there anything else that you wanted to say before we did that?
Not really. I just, I do want to say, I want to clarify for our audience, the African Socialist International. So the African Socialist International is made up of the African People's Socialist Party all over the world, the African People's Socialist Party USA, African People's Socialist Party Bahamas, African People's Socialist Party Occupied Azania, and others. And so, you know, we often say the African People's Socialist Party. We also mean the African Socialist International. So we are reading an article from the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party Occupied Azania, or South Africa, tonight. So I wanted to clarify that for our audience before going into it.
So do we want to divide this up?
Yes. We have 4 sections. And I think that the first section is a little short, so I think we can combine that.
Okay.
And Chairman Penny, if you would like to begin, and then we can go to me, and then to Chair Jesse.
Great. Well, I want to, of course, start by saluting the African People's Socialist Party chairman of Occupied Azania, who was named at the recent plenary of the African People's Socialist Party as the director of organization for the whole continent of Africa, which he talks a little bit about in here, and the plans for that. And, you know, there's a great picture of him. I don't know if him and Comrade Asa.
Right.
Yeah.
Hold up the picture. And
Tafari and Asa.
Just to really salute what an amazing job they do. I believe that, from what I understand from the report that was given at the plenary of the African People's Socialist Party a few weeks ago, that that they have built the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement, the mass organization of the party in almost every province of Occupied Azania in South Africa, just with so many dynamic young forces, and it's really powerful. And as has been said, this is an amazing article. It is just so clear. And I do want to say that I assume, Comrade Jackson, that the reason that you asked me to be on about this is because the African People's Solidarity Committee is going to have a study on this Saturday night. You can say the time and where a little bit later, but we're going to have a study for white people, in particular, to talk about the chairman's theory, his chapter, both from the book An Uneasy Equilibrium and the more recent Vanguard, which was the political report to the party's 7th Congress, on the African nation and what that means for white people. So it's, you know, really want to call on people who are on this to tune in at 7 o'clock Central on Saturday evening to really have this discussion. And Chairman Tafari McGarry is summing up a little bit about the question of African nation, so it's very powerful. So I'll start reading it. And Tafari is saying, Africa is the national homeland of all black people across the world. The African People's Socialist Party, through its theory of African internationalism, has been able to unambiguously explain who constitutes the African nation. And again, we will discuss that. The chairman's analysis of who constitutes the African nation is really, I don't even have words to describe it. I mean, it's really, really powerful and really affect and is going to, it's in the process of defining the future of this planet, truly and literally. So Tafari continues, I will not elaborate on that in this article, but it should be obvious, without much theorizing, that if you look like people in the Zania and your ancestors were taken by force from Africa, then you're an African. Even though our colonizers in the Americas and Europe often want to convince us that we are Americans and Europeans, respectively, they do not hesitate to treat us the same way they treat Africans here in Africa. Moreover, because of our history and material conditions, we have been able to observe very close cultural affinities between African people at home and abroad. Therefore, African people are one, regardless of where we may be located following our dispersal at the hand of the European colonizer. And Africa, with all its wealth that is currently under the custodianship of our colonizers, belongs to all of us wherever we may be. The case of Europeans enslaving Africans and colonizing Africa, concurrently becoming a dominating force over our lives, is one of dehumanization. Consequently, our struggle to overturn this relationship is a case of reclaiming our humanity. African martyr Robert Sobukwe poetically referred to this quest as one of being able to, quote, call our souls our own. That is a beautiful quote. And Robert Sobukwe was a hero of the African liberation struggle in southern Africa. This struggle has been instinctively fought by African people without relent since the first attack on their motherland saw the snatching of the first group of Africans to be turned into unpaid laborers by Portuguese pirates. With undying spirit of resistance, we were able to carry that spirit with us, even to the Americas and Europe, where we would undergo a brutal process of centuries of abuse and alienation. Through the same economic structures of the transatlantic slave trade, our imperialist oppressors penetrated our continent and began this blood-stained, lucrative business of sucking Africa's resources around the clock for centuries. Despite what some pundits say about Ethiopia and Liberia, every inch of the African landmass has suffered colonial attack and oppression one way or another.
Uhuru. And then under the header, the artificial borders that divide us, it was in 1652 when a Dutchman named Jan van Riebeck established the first settler community in the southern tip of Africa. Since then, African people connected to this terrestrial location referred to as Southern Africa have not known peace. Not only do we suffer the consequence of being colonially dispossessed, our ignoble colonizers have recently found it necessary to bastardize history by arguing that we have no claim to this land, because when they arrived, it was empty with wild animals and untouched shrubs, again, according to them. Today, Africa is no longer one. 55 artificial entities have been carved up to facilitate the loot of our resources and denying us the ability to consolidate our national identity. Not only are we kept away from our resources, we also have a minority, neocolonial class of black compradors whose material interests are tied with those of the colonizers, effectively pushing our people out of political life and away from the ability to realize our power as a people dispersed across the world. With neocolonialism, what we in the Uhuru movement refer to as, quote, white power and blackface, imperialist scavengers continue to loot African resources, compromising our ability to produce life for ourselves. many young people locked within the 55 so-called countries are becoming more and more urbanized, but instead the poverty and unemployment keep rising at an alarming rate. This is happening while thousands of, quote, smart young Africans are enticed in the form of bursaries to leave Africa and contribute in Western development through what is actually an imperialist practice of brain drain. Uhuru.
Africa for Africans at home and abroad. In the early 1900s, it took an African from Jamaica who never set foot in Africa until his last breath to make us realize that as long as we continue to see ourselves as many isolated entities or appendages of our colonial masters, we will remain weak and ineffective. For anyone who's just tuning in, we're reading Chairman Tafari Mugeri's article, The Chairman of the African People's Socialist Party Occupied Azania, in the Burning Spear newspaper, page 7. So Chairman Tafari continues, "It was Marcus Garvey who gave us the blueprint for what it will take for Africa to be unified and liberated from foreign forces who desire nothing good for our motherland. Through his organization, Garvey declared that, quote, our success educationally, industrially, and politically is based upon the protection of a nation founded by ourselves, and the nation can be nowhere else but in Africa. It is for this reason that we have taken up the responsibility to build the Azania front of the African Revolution, through which the African working class can finally connect with the rest of their colonized brothers and sisters and wage a successful struggle against our oppressors. The African People's Socialist Party Occupied Azania that we are building in South Africa, alongside the work that is being initiated in places like Ghana, Nigeria, and the Netherlands, is practical proof of our determination to build the African Socialist International, the bastion of the African Revolution. Africans in the US, Brazil, or London cannot be free unless Africa is free." Another African from the Western Hemisphere, Malcolm X, realized this fact and made the statement that help Africa in its struggle to free itself from Western domination. No matter where the black man is, he will never be respected until Africa is a world power. Mm-hmm. This is what Chairman Omali Yeshitela has been tirelessly calling for all of us to for the past 50 years. A unified socialist Africa cannot be realized by the efforts of Africans in Africa alone. Only through the conscious participation of Africans dispersed across the world can Africa and Africans be truly free. One Africa, one nation. Build the African Socialist International.
Uhuru. And again, this is page 7 of the February 2020 Burning Spear newspaper, titled "The Redemption of Africa Depends on All African People Dispersed Across the World, A Call from the Motherland," by Chairman Tafari Mugeri of the African People's Socialist Party Occupied Azania, the correct word for South Africa. South Africa is a colonial term. So, Uhuru. Well, thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny and Chair Jesse, for reading that article with us. And as our guest, Chairwoman Penny, I want to ask you a few questions and open it up to our audience as well for your questions. So if you're watching and have a question or a comment, either post in the comments below, or you can call us at 727-537-9171. That number is in the comments and also in the description of the video in order to ask your question or make your comments with your own voice. So, Uhuru. And I want to appreciate everyone who is tuning in. Again, Virginia Wilson and Ron Hudson, Leah Fifield, Edwina, Jake, John, Temba Shabanda, Santosh, Ron Hudson, all the people mentioned before. And I know that new people are watching too, but I haven't seen your comments yet. So feel free to comment and we'll give you a shout out. All right. So, Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny. First, did you have anything you wanted to say about this article before I go into our prepared questions?
Uhuru, well, I just wanted to join you in saluting all of the comrades and the people who are on this show tonight, and really appreciate you, and just shout out to Virginia and Jake and so many other comrades that, we just really appreciate so much. And I just wanted to say before, we say more that the the amount of resources, the assault on Africa, which the chairman has laid out very clearly, is the cornerstone of the formation of capitalism itself. That the assault on Africa is what transformed Europe from feudalism into capitalism, and that the wealth that was brought and stolen from Africa and continues to be is so massive. I don't think there's ever been an attempt to quantify it. I don't know if you could, because the first thing is the theft of African human beings, returning of African human beings into commodities that created the stock markets of Amsterdam, of London, of New York, that created wealth, that created the whole ability for capitalism, the startup, the primitive accumulation, as Marx called it, and as the chairman quotes, the startup capital, the startup money for capitalism to be born, along with the genocide of the indigenous people of this hemisphere, the theft of that land, and the colonial domination of the majority of the people on the planet Earth. The thing about Africa is the amount of wealth that is owed to Africa and African people in reparations it can't be quantified. And first of all, how do you put a price on what African people have gone through? Mm-hmm. But in terms of wealth that has to be returned, that, you think about just all of the ways that African people's labor was stolen, African people themselves were stolen and sold, and then they were turned into work machines that produced the wealth, and forcibly, in just in the most brutal way possible, and that all of the spin-off other kinds of industry of capitalism, from sugar, tobacco, coffee, tea, opium, all the things that were involved in this thing that was called the triangular trade, just the wealth, the vast wealth, the creating of the Industrial Revolution, it's just, it can't be calculated. But we do know that everything that white people have and that capitalism has, all of its wealth, must be returned to the African working class. And, I haven't even mentioned yet the vast resources of Africa, from the Congo, from Azania, from Namibia, from every, Ghana, the Gold Coast, they called it. Just the vast resources that are being stolen today in Congo, all of the minerals and coltan needed to produce the whole tech industry, the computers and cell phones and every other thing that's based on electronics, that that the white people make billions and trillions of dollars from now, every single day, every single year, and that all of the, like we're saying, the gold and diamonds, the fish, the wild game, every single thing in Africa that is taken out of there and has been for 600 years, it has to go back. And that's what reparations means and what it's about, and that's what our responsibility is in the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, is to win white people to recognize that the anti-imperialist struggle in the entire world is in the liberation of Africa, led by the African working class, and this is the true definition of socialism, when African workers have control of the means of production and the return of all of the value of their labor and land. and the value of the stolen colonial loot that has gone on for 600 years, then there will be socialism for the entire world, because U.S. imperialism and European imperialism cannot continue to exist without the literal foundation of Africa. And that is why the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, the African Socialist International, which is the worldwide organization of African People's Socialist Parties, and these young comrades of the party on the ground in Azania, hungry to win all of Africa to this struggle for liberation that will win because it has the science. And that's why it is so threatening to imperialism. That is why imperialism is very, very clear that the organization of the masses of African workers inside of Africa and around the world will and can and absolutely is hungry to and planning to defeat U.S. imperialism and capitalism everywhere that it is in the world, and carries with it, this struggle carries with it the also the liberation of indigenous and colonized peoples everywhere. And it's in our interest, to defeat this imperialism and to unite with this. And that's why this is so powerful. This is so historic to read this. There is nothing like the African People's Socialist Party, except for the African People's Socialist Party, in the entire world. There's nothing else besides Chairman Omali Shatila and this political theory of African internationalism that can define, how revolution has to be won and what are the elements of it, and the necessity of theory and practice in unity, that the theory of African internationalism necessitates the African People's Socialist Party built on democratic centralism and the African People's Solidarity Committee. If we believe that imperialism must go, if we look at these debates of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and see that, as the chairman says, the nonviolent fight between different sectors of the ruling class, and that we recognize that the liberation of Africa and African people and all the oppressed and colonized peoples in the world is what creates a new and socialist world, then we too must be organized. We cannot just be another, cafe revolutionary, quote unquote, sitting around drinking a latte and maybe reading the chairman's book. We have to be out there on the streets organizing other white people to return the stolen resources. We've got to hurry. African people have to be free. We have to do our assignment here on the pedestal of the oppression of African people. So I just want to say that and open it up, and if people, want to discuss that, because this is the critical question of today. This is every question, from the environment to the coronavirus, to the question of China and Russia and white nationalist attacks and the murders of Africans, and the fact that indigenous people are stuffed onto concentration camps called reservations. Every single question, white women, white LGBT, all go back to the central question of parasitic capitalism built on the back of African and oppressed peoples, and the question of reparations, the return of the stolen wealth, the redistribution of the resources of the planet under the leadership of the African working class. It goes back to that, and we have the honor of being able to be under the leadership and the responsibility to take this on. Uhuru.
Uhuru. I really want to appreciate that, Jerome Kenny. That was incredibly powerful. I just want to transcribe that and put it up for everyone. Uhuru. And I, while you were speaking, about the urgency of organizing, that we have to take action now. We have, I put in the comments for YouTube, become a member, or you can donate or do both at uhurusolidarity.org. And to volunteer, you can email us at info@uhurusolidarity.org. Because if you are not a member, as you heard Chairman Penny speak, this is what we can do to make a better world. We have to take action now. So if you're not a member already, go to uhurusolidarity.org. If you are a member, consider upgrading your membership, and volunteer, get involved, and let's build this movement. And I want to appreciate Ali Aiello, who's tuning in from St. Petersburg, Florida. Uhuru Ali. And all of our viewers on YouTube and Facebook. Casey Mackey from St. Louis, and a number of others who I can't tell where they're from, but appreciate all of you. So Uhuru, Chairman Penny, I want to appreciate you saying all that you just said. And Chair Jesse, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Uhuru, yeah, I really wanted to appreciate that amazing summation from Chairwoman Penny Hess as well. And I especially wanted to unite with the thing that you said, Chairwoman Penny, about the fact that this is the core of every issue, comes back to, this question of reparations and African liberation, and how clear that is, with being able to look at the world through the clarifying lens of African internationalism, and seeing that this entire system, all of capitalism that dominates the entire world, was built fundamentally on the oppression and colonization of Africa and African people, then it only makes sense that every problem in the world can be traced back to that same origin. And sometimes, maybe people, friends, family that we know that haven't yet been won to fully understand or unite with the worldview of African internationalism might hear us speaking and might say, like, oh, you blame everything on colonialism. You always bring everything back to colonialism. And we do. Yeah. We absolutely do, because as the chairman said, if there's somebody in some remote place of the earth right now with a headache, you can blame parasitic capitalism and colonialism, because that's the system that reigns supreme over the planet Earth, and that is destroying the environment. And it's just obvious. It shouldn't even be up for debate. Like, there was not, massive extinction of, millions upon billions of species before the rise of capitalism. There was not abrupt climate change. There wasn't oil spills. There was no Greta running to Davos to beg the imperialists to be nicer to the environment. Like, there was, even in Australia, the fires that were engulfing Australia, it was sort of ridiculous. The white Australian government was saying, wow, we have had to consult with the so-called Aboriginal people, the native people there. They knew how to deal with this, so we've had to tap into that Aboriginal knowledge to try to deal with these fires. And they even said in the article that the areas of Australia where there still were indigenous people living were not really affected by the fires, because they knew how to prevent them and they knew how to put them out. So it was literally like parasitic capitalism burning itself alive. And it's just clear that this system is bad for the entire planet Earth and for all human beings. And it's built fundamentally, its foundation is the assault on Africa, the genocide against the indigenous people, the colonization of Africa, all the things that Chairwoman Penny just described, the endless looting of Africa every single day. And I just totally agree with what you said, that this is the most important issue for white people too. And, you watch these presidential debates, they're not talking about this stuff. No, they're supposedly talking about the most important issues that voters are looking to make their decision about who's going to be the next, commander-in-chief of the U.S. empire. And they're not talking about these things. And in fact, the person who is supposed to represent socialism is someone who gives Denmark as the greatest example of what so-called socialism can look like, and balks when Bloomberg calls him a communist. He's like, I'm not a communist. That's a cheap shot. Well, I'm a communist because I'm an African internationalist, and the road to socialism, which is the road to communism, is reparations, is African revolution. The road to socialism is painted black, as Chairman Omali Shatella has famously said. So if we're white people who are really about socialism, which many millions of white people today say they are, and that's great. And those white people, we want to win you, we want to recruit you, we want to embrace you into the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, because we are not being arrogant when we say this is the only way for a white person to be able to say they're a socialist and not be full of it. Like, this is the only way, because socialism will only come about when the pedestal upon which capitalism rests is overturned. And therefore, reparations is a revolutionary demand. So anyway, I'm just reiterating what Chairwoman Penny said, but I just really unite, and I unite with the urgency. Like, we got to get going, we got to get moving, we have to take on struggles with our own filthy white ruling class, we have to demand reparations from these CEOs, from all these companies that are sucking the resources from Africa. We got Apple is actually being sued right now for their exploitation of African child labor, slavery.
And the deaths of children as well.
Yeah, in the Congo, where cobalt and coltan and all these other resources and minerals are being extracted, without which, as S.G. Loezi Kinshasa said at the plenary, Silicon Valley would collapse tonight. Yeah. So reparations have to be paid, and white people have to pay reparations as well, and have to fight for reparations, not as just another, progressive cause that we give lip service to, but actually as the very mission of our lives. And that's why the Uhuru Solidarity Movement was built.
Uhuru. Really want to appreciate that for Jesse. Just go ahead, Chairwoman Penny.
Well, I just really appreciate that, USM Chair Jesse. And I think that it brings us also to the very key question in the chairman's analysis of the African nation, when he says, well, if African people everywhere are African, then what are white people? Who are we? We have to ask the question, who are we?
Right.
And as the chairman makes it absolutely clear that it's not a struggle against racism.
Right.
It's a struggle against colonialism. And that is like, wow. I feel so relieved to hear that, because I just don't know, if I could ever get rid of racism, because I sit on the pedestal of this, and it's the racism is the ideological underpinning of capitalism, parasitic capitalism. But I do know that I could fight colonialism under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. It's given us an assignment to take the question of reparations and even take the understanding of the Vanguard Party onto the pedestal, which is who we are and where we live. So I think that I just think inherent in this question, in this article, is that it is not about a struggle against racism, and it is a struggle against colonialism, the physical, political, economic, and military occupation of a colonizer nation over a whole entire people for profit that benefits economically all the white people who sit on the pedestal. And that definition is even in the frickin' imperialist dictionary. And so I think that, that just makes it really clear that we have a job to do, we're assigned, and that the struggle of African people is for power, for liberation, and imperialism, and to have complete political and economic control over their own destiny, and indeed the destiny of the entire planet, and over their own political and economic system that will unleash the genius of the African working class, which white people have also stolen, and bring about a world without oppression and without war, without even the material basis for war and oppression. the only way this planet is going to survive, and that's the world I want to live in. And it's just so funny, isn't it, that the capitalism makes the people who want to share all of the earth, to have control of, on the part of working people over the means of production, and therefore the interests of the entire society, that they are the villains, they are the enemy, and they are the enemy, because they're the enemy of capitalism and imperialism. But that the African working class is the most vilified, the most,
yes,
in every way. Here in St. Louis, every day in the newspaper is another attack on the integrity and the on the dignity of African working people, because they are trying to gentrify this city and drive all African people out. And I just think that the African People's Socialist Party Chairman Omali Shatella, who's fought for the African working class without fail, with relentlessly for the last 50 or more years, and who says in a really simple way, African people are good. African people are the moral thermometer of the world, and yet today, in particular, as part of how this U.S. government has crushed the movement in the past, in the 1960s, that what went with that was an attempt to crush the dignity and integrity of the African working class and turn them literally into villains, filling up, prisons to the highest prison population in the entire world inside this country. But I just want to say one more thing, and that is that we have to, we want to do a workshop called Learning Reparations, because unlearning racism doesn't work. We have to learn reparations and take that on, and that is how we can make our self-criticism, how we can rectify our historic violence and terror and torture of African people, our participation in that, and our complete complicity with the exploitation of African people in every possible way that goes on still today, massively. That's how we rectify that in a really powerful and principled way under the leadership of this strategy of, for African liberation of the African People's Socialist Party. So we just want to say that, and, we have to accept who we are, and we have to take it on, and this is the way forward on this planet. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. I really want to appreciate, yes, Uhuru. I really want to appreciate that statement, Sherman Penny, and also yours, Chair Jesse. And I just wrote down the name of that workshop, and would love to have it here in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Right on. Yep.
I want to appreciate Kristen Forthen, who's tuning in from Spokane, Washington. And we have 7 minutes left of this study. So if you have a comment or question, please comment below, and so that we can address it. You can also call us at 727-537-9171. So with our 6 minutes left, we do have a number of very important announcements that we want to make. But I also want to ask a question that I prepared before this study. I just want to give a little bit of time in case anyone else has a question who's tuning in. ... Okay. So, these are really 3 questions, but I wanted to put them all forward because they all tie in together about, how the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party, that's in Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution, it mandates that the African People's Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement build in occupied Azania, colonially known as South Africa, and throughout Africa, and the significance of that, which ties into this idea that is out there that in the international world that only white people in the U.S. owe reparations. But obviously the Uhuru movement has a different take on that. And, it's been laid out as very critical for us to build specifically in occupied Tanzania and everywhere. And I also wanted to ask about the line that's out there that the resistance of African people in Tanzania against white farmers, African people taking back their land, the idea that that is somehow white genocide. So I wanted to ask those really three things that are all tied into one, and to hear your thoughts, Chairman Penny.
Well, of course, all white people everywhere owe reparations, and it's very clear in occupied Tanzania because white people have the land and have a higher percentage of the land, even under neo-colonialism, than even under the apartheid regime. And so, the majority of impoverished working-class African people live in what are called the townships, which is a horrible euphemism for basically, a reservation. I mean, it's just where African people are living on tiny cinder block, little square houses, probably no bigger, or it's not smaller than the room you're in right now. And with no work, it's out in the country, generally speaking. It's out in the counties. It's in the provinces. It's not in the rural area. There's no work, no jobs, nothing. I mean, it's horrible conditions. And African people are very clear that this is their land. Occupied Tanzania is theirs. And that what is happening is resistance. They are fighting to take back their land. That's all. If you're a colonizer, whether it's a cop in St. Louis or, someplace else, or whether you're a white farmer, or whether you're a white farmer in the United States, the people whose land it is are coming back to get it. It's as simple as that. If you're sitting on stolen land and you're making money and you're killing the people whose land it is, they are going to fight you. And it's a war, and they are going to fight you with every means possible and by any means necessary. And that is what is going on there. It's as simple as that. African people are going to be free. And when you see Tafari, Chair Tafari and Asa, they're from those townships. They're from there. I just saw not too long ago an incredible rally that they had as the African National Women's Organization, and Comrade Chair Tafari was there and speaking, and they were right in the middle of the townships, right in the middle of one. People in those townships they've never been even in a bus or a taxi. They've never been to a restaurant. I mean, it's outrageous that the people whose land it is are living today under the dire conditions of colonialism, and white people, especially in the cities of Johannesburg and Cape Town, are living in luxury beyond the imagination. And I know party members who have been to Johannesburg and Cape Town say that it's so advanced. It makes, Whole Foods look like some little store, that it's so advanced what they have there. And I know even in Cape Town, in this past year, they are in a serious crisis for water. There's no more water in Cape Town. This is part of the crisis of the environment under imperialism. And white people are digging their own wells all the way down to the aquifer. The Africans will get nothing but a bucket of dirty water. I mean, this is, African people are going to be free. This is their land, and all those resources belong to them. And, there's just so much to say about the conditions in the continent of Africa. And Jesse mentioned the Congo and how Apple and all of these software trillionaire, companies inside the United States and in Europe are making all this money. And it's based on U.S. trained and armed proxy troops that go into Congo and force children to work until they die and rape women in the most brutal ways in the middle of the town. This isn't, African men against African women. This is U.S.-backed terror so that we can have a computer and a phone. And African people are going to be free. And that's what this is about. And, I just feel that Chair Tafari, Gary, and comrades are heroic. Yeah. They are heroic. They are powerful. They are changing the world. And, I just salute them, and it's an honor to work under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And just want to say one more thing on that we do want to build African People's Solidarity Committee in occupied Tanzania. We've been talking to a woman more in the Cape Town area. We do need to meet people in Johannesburg and Gauteng province. And, we want to be there. We want to go this summer. We want to have events. We want to take on the whole question of reparations is the key. And white people who are sitting on that stolen land need to start turning it over right now. So there's more we can say, and we'll talk about it on Saturday night as well. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru, thank you so much, Chairman Penny. I really want to appreciate that. It just sums up absolutely everything. And, we definitely, if you're watching and you're in occupied Tanzania, this is the place for you, and we encourage you to join and, host the African People's Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement, speaking where you are. So we are at 8:02, so I do want to go through our announcements. But before I do that, Chair Jesse, do you have anything you would like to say?
Nope.
All right.
It's all been said.
It's
a great study.
Uhuru, yes. So our next episode is we're going to be studying from the column Kinshasa International by Luwezi Kinshasa, the Secretary General of the African Socialist International. We're going to be reading his article on page 4 of the February Spear, We Cannot Be Fooled. Macron reforms the CFA to maintain French colonial domination in Africa. So we'll also be discussing the African Socialist International and what's going on in the continent of Africa, and many more things in the next episode, which will be episode 12. And also want to say that I encourage everyone who is tuning in to come to the National Convention of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement coming up April 18th and 19th. That's a Saturday and Sunday in St. Louis, Missouri, at the headquarters of the Black Power Blueprint, where all of the reparations we raise go to. The registration is in the link there. Don't hesitate, register now and get your plane tickets or make your travel plans in order to meet us there, to hear Chairman Omali Yeshitela, to hear Chairman Penny Hess, Chair Jesse, and many leaders of the African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru movement, and receive the training we need in order to carry out our mission to speak to our white community and organize for reparations and for white people joining the African Revolution. I also encourage everyone to tune in to the studies, the hashtag Omali Taught Me Sunday Studies by Chairman Omali Yeshitela, which are at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on youtube.uhuru TV and facebook.omali.yeshitela. And posted earlier, but posting again, of Chairman Penny's study this coming Saturday. discussing the question of the Afghan nation, called Why Chairman Amalia Tella's Definition of the Afghan Nation Matters to White People. That's this Saturday, February 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Facebook at Uhuru Solidarity. So definitely encourage everyone to tune into that and share far and wide, host a viewing party, share with your friends. And then also the Afghan National Women's Organization that we've discussed a little bit in this episode is having their national convention March 27th through 29th, and we can attend in solidarity. So that is themed Black Women's Convention, Sisters United for Revolution, and the registration link is provided there. So I want to appreciate everyone who's been tuning in, who's been sharing, and also appreciate our incredible engineer, Kyle Weiss, Uhuru Kyle, making this possible, and also in our studio audience, Amanda Carlozzi. So yes. appreciate everyone tuning in, and join us next week, Thursday, and for more on the Afghan Socialist International. I just want to say unity through
Reparations.
Uhuru. Thank you, Sharon Penny. Uhuru.